Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our event, Salary Negotiation and Pay Equity. My name is Bobev. I am the founder of Disrupt the Gap. I'm excited to have the privilege to kick off this panel. The bios of our speakers can be found on the event website or by scanning the QR codes throughout the event. I'm going to introduce the panelists. They're each going to have 30 seconds to introduce themselves. And let us start with Helen.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Helen Archontou. I'm the CEO of the YWCA of Northern New Jersey. Our mission is to eliminate racism and empower women. So obviously, this is a core issue for our work. We want to see pay equity because that does create economic equity for women. And also, most importantly, it does help us eliminate racism to create economic equity for all.
All right. Okay. Next up, Andrée.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrée Peart Laney, and I'm an attorney. I'm a legal advisor with the Employers Association of New Jersey, where we counsel employers on compliance with various labor and employment laws, and as you might imagine, chief among them pay equity laws, including some recent ones that we will be discussing here today. So I look forward to this time with you.
Thank you. And finally, LaTonia.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm LaTonia Pouncey. I'm the president and CEO of Talent Solutions. We are an HR consulting, staffing, and recruiting firm based out of New York and New Jersey. And we work with candidates as well as employers. And one of those things is helping to negotiate salary. And we'll be discussing that here today. So looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much. And very briefly about me, once again, I'm Bobev. I'm the founder of Disrupt the Gap. Disrupt the Gap is a multi-front disruption of pay gaps. One major front of disruption is engaging with employers to do pay equality audits, training their compliance matters. Another major front of disruption is providing education and support for people to do self-advocacy. How do you ask for a raise? What are your rights? How do you change your mindset? All right. So we're going to go through a series of topics today. We'll focus a little bit about your rights, your self-advocacy, your mindset. We'll also work in information for any employers that are in the room if you're looking for support. All right, so first I want to kick off with the topic of your rights, your protections. And I'll ask, what are some legal protections that people working in New York and New Jersey have? And I first want to toss this out to Andrée.
Okay, so when we're discussing legal protections and legal responsibilities, there are laws in New Jersey specifically, and throughout our country, there are federal laws which require employers to pay in a non-discriminatory fashion. So we're all familiar with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Even before that, there was the Equal Pay Act of 1963. And guess what? With respect to the protections that employees have to perhaps ask colleagues, how much do you get paid? Or to discuss other terms and conditions of their employment. There has been since 1935 the National Labor Relations Act, which guarantees employees the right to discuss unfettered the terms and conditions of their employment. So that would seem to contradict greatly the salary conversations that many of us were told, particularly older ones of us were told not to have at work. It was déclassé, it was gauche. But what employers really, in some instances, didn't want us to know was that we were being paid significantly less than our colleagues, perhaps. So those conversations were socially discouraged and in some instances expressly prohibited. But the Diane B. Allen Equal Pay Act, which was passed in 2018 here in New Jersey, Diane Allen being a former legislator here in our state who tirelessly advocated for equal pay, makes it illegal, unlawful for employers to prohibit discussions of salary among employees. Employees are free to disclose their salaries. They're free to ask others, even their bosses, about salary. Bosses can say, none of your business. That is allowed, but they are empowered to ask and cannot be retaliated against for making such inquiries. Other laws, pay transparency laws. For example, for those of you who perhaps have offices in New York City, you are aware that as of last year, a law has been enacted requiring employers to post for jobs and also for promotions, the maximum and minimum of that job. That's pretty amazing. As far as the states that are also following in that pattern, we have Illinois rather, and California. But it seems to be picking up momentum, so I wouldn't be surprised if it happens in other places. As far as municipalities in New Jersey, Jersey City has a similar law that requires job posters to post the maximum and minimum. Is that enough for you?
That's very comprehensive. Thank you so much. Helen, can you add anything to this and maybe even address if somebody has a grievance, how can they proceed?
And so I'm so grateful that you shared all of that, because I think that these laws are something that, we don't always feel like your average person, right? That there's so much detail to laws and we feel like that we're not going to know them all. And but they do regulate our lives, especially, in every place and especially in this place. The reality of it is, though, when something is happening in your employment that is a concern to you, you do have recourse. These laws have set that up for you. And here in New Jersey, you can get an attorney and you can file a complaint. You also can, through our Attorney General's office, go to the Division on Civil Rights. It's right online, and you can file a complaint there as well. And you just have to have general information, your name information, your employer's name and information, some of the details of maybe any witnesses, and put it all in there. And they will review the information and accordingly do an investigation. Now, you might say, well, why would I file with the Attorney General's office versus get an attorney and do it on my own? And one of the pieces, the fact that attorneys can cost money, obviously, and you may or may not have the, ability to be able to come up with that, because sometimes they can be expensive for these types of cases, but you don't need an attorney to do that filing with the Division on Civil Rights, and you can do it online. The great thing, too, is all that information is in multiple languages, so you don't have to feel excluded if you can't read English, if you can't speak English, it can be provided to you in all different languages, because we have to remember that this pay equity issue is impacting everyone in our country, no matter where you're working. And also, in addition to that, you can call and speak to someone over on the Division of Civil Rights and have a conversation with them about your situation to help you explore if you do want to file a complaint, even if you just have some questions about it. And I will say I had the opportunity, just last Thursday, I was with our Director of Civil Rights, NJBIA, and we were talking about, I was telling him about today, and we were talking about the legislation. And what he pointed out, which is so true, is the Diane B. Allen law, which, as I was just sharing, I had the honor of being in the room when Governor Murphy signed that piece of legislation, because on behalf of my work at the YWCA, we advocated so strongly for it. It is really the strongest piece of legislation in the entire country like that, because, and I am not an attorney, and I will, leave the legal folks to talk about the details of this, but it not only gives you protection for the same job title of someone with the same salary that you have in your workplace, but for the content of your work as well. It goes deeper. So if you have a similar kind of go down your job description, which is also why it's so important to make sure your job description is always up to date in all the details of what you're doing. But if your job description and the job description of someone else in your workplace are similar, but they're getting paid differently, and someone says, well, that's because you have different job titles, in New Jersey, that doesn't fly with that.
Excellent point as well. I personally leverage the Diane Allen Equal Pay Act in my own particular life. So if anyone ever has to be their own advocate, and have a legal journey, please count me in your corner to tell you the ropes. One other small facet I'll add to give another lens here. Often when we think about our rights, we think about, well, what are the rights in New Jersey? I want to let you know that there's various legislation that may be out of state and may still protect you, or vice versa. So an example, the Diana Equal Pay Act, you could live in New Jersey, your employer could be based somewhere else, and you're still protected. All right, so let's move from there and talk about more also self-advocacy and advice for folks that want to ask for a raise. I'd like to toss this out to LaTonia.
To continue on the path with, I just wanted to make a comment that leads into asking for a raise. It's important that employers know that when you're posting salary ranges, that you're making a good faith effort to do that, and you're not posting just these bogus, long salary ranges. If a job is averaging $100,000 a year, you're not posting the salary ranges $30,000 to $150,000. That's not going to fly. And we have seen that when pay transparency began to, really gain traction and become more aware. Companies, were being targeted and called out for that. And more and more media was, making it known that and pointing out specifically job ads that were being posted with these long, bogus salary ranges. I mean, really going from $30,000 to $200,000. How can you really come up with the salary range? That's not a salary range. So, I say that so you all are aware of that from a candidate or an employee perspective, as well as an employer perspective. But as an individual who is now looking to ask for a raise, it's important to understand and ask yourself, why do you deserve this raise? Now, I know some eyebrows were raised when I just mentioned that, because you probably all said, because I just deserve it. That's why. But really think about, why do you deserve the raise? And what is it that you're truly looking for? What is your ask? Are you looking for, and when you look at it, look at the total compensation. Many times employees are just thinking about the base salary or their hourly rate. But for those who receive bonuses, commissions, also non-direct compensation, perks, think about those things that you would be looking for, because when you go to prepare for the acts and when you go to actually execute on the acts, you could potentially have a counteroffer. So you need to have that in play. So when you're going to ask for the raise, you need to prepare, right? And that is researching what the salary is for your particular role, right? And you can do that using online tools. I'm not so much a fan of just going out to just any type of online compensation tool, because a lot of things go into compensation planning. But if you're looking at like LinkedIn Jobs and other job boards that have the actual compensation posted for a role, you can, look up a couple of those roles and then get an average from there, right? You can look at associations, go to your local association and ask them for salary surveys that you can look at. Ask people in your network, right? So those are ways that you can do that as well. But then also, once you've gathered that information, really look at what you have actually achieved, your accomplishments, and prepare that information so you can bring it to your boss as to why you're looking, to ask, for this raise. And then also the timing, right? We don't want to ask for a raise if the company is not doing well financially. They're faced with layoffs. They're faced with budget cuts. That's not a good time to ask for a raise. But if those things are not in play, by all means, go for it. But you have to do your research. You have to bring that research, with you. And then you have to prepare for your pitch. So what is preparing for the pitch? Making sure you have your accomplishments, your achievements together, along with your salary planning information, to present that in a professional manner. We don't want to go to our bosses asking for raises and we're demanding the raise, right? We can't go to our bosses when we're actually not performing ourselves, right? But if you have awards and recognitions, achievements both inside and outside of the organization, I'll always tell people, think about achievements that you're doing outside of the organization, because you're also a brand ambassador, not only for yourself, but for the organization as well. So bring those things together, prepare for the pitch, and then make the pitch. But also be mindful that, again, there could be a counteroffer that comes to you in the way of perhaps it's not now, or if it's not an increase in base pay, commission, or bonus, perhaps it's in some other means as far as perks, maybe some vacation or other benefits that you may be looking for. And think about some of the things that you may not have now that you really would like to get to. A lot of times that is flexibility for many, many people, right? Or some other perks that maybe the next level may have, but you may not get. You'll be surprised what the company is willing to offer employees who have been committed, who are dedicated, and who really excel at their work. So you can go after it, but it's all about preparing, doing the research, and the timing to make that a success.
Thank you so much. And a great topic about, there are different sources to get salary data from. Most of us are very familiar with, very common websites. I want to let you know that there's far more sources out there than you even realize. The U.S. Department of Labor maintains real salary numbers. A lot of these salary websites, you don't know if it's actually a real number or not. Another is public payroll data. Even if you work in the private sector, it's good to also see what that role would be compensated out in the public sector. If anyone needs URLs to some of these resources, please stop by. I'm in the main ballroom. I can get you those URLs. Before we move on, I want to just give two other lenses here about preparing to ask for a raise. Often we think about all the information that we're going to be gathering outside of the organization. Let's say it's like comp data. But I also want to say that there's a lot of information you can gather inside of the organization. LaTonia talked about earlier timing. When is the cycle that your company is doing the budgets each year? All right, because if you're asking for something after they've locked in a budget, it might not go in your favor. I would also look at who are your decision makers? Who is everyone above you that has to say yes? I would show your face. I would build a relationship with each one of those folks. I also think about what moves the needle at that organization. Is it, how you demonstrated leadership or something else, right? And last thing I'll add here, so when I teach on this topic, I do a segment called Anticipate and Pivot. We already know we can anticipate very common objections that might come up. Oh, the budget's already locked, or keep doing a good job, we'll give you a raise in 6 months, or this job is work from home, so we're not going to give you X. If we can anticipate every one of those moments and we have some verbiage ready to go, that's amazing. So if you need help with that, let me know. I've got some charts from some of my workshops. Any other guidance, ladies, before we move on to the next topic?
With respect to resources?
Just asking for a raise.
Well, I think that certainly knowing that you bring something to the table, you're not, to the extent that the timing is right, you're not whining, you're not angry, you're making a business pitch, if you will, argument in your own behalf. If you've ever had to advocate for others, as I do as an attorney, but HR professionals, consultants, CEOs, people have to advocate every day in behalf of others. So you turn now the lens on yourself and you look at yourself as the commodity that you are pitching to your employer. Here's the bottom line. Here's how I've improved it. Here's what I do that enhances your organization and elevates its profile. And I believe that I can quantify it as requiring I be compensated this much. Now, I know for myself, if I feel I'm being underpaid, that is a feeling that I can't live with. So I will knock on the door one week, and if I get a no, I will probably figure out some other way of making that same request. Be persistent and creative and figure out what really is your value proposition, which is measured not from your perspective, but from the business's. So understand your business's culture and what makes you valuable to them.
And just to add to the comments that you've heard here, Do the research, you heard, and know what you want to say. Self-advocacy is so key. Again, we spend so much time advocating for others. We sometimes don't think of ourselves. It's the first module I teach to my students at the School of Social Work at Montclair State always is self-advocacy, to make sure that they learn how to stand up for themselves. But the other piece is practicing talking about yourself. As women, we are so used to, and we're socialized to pump up everybody else around us, but we're not always comfortable to talk about ourselves. And we actually are told otherwise. We're told when you're growing up, so many of us are socialized, and some of it is cultural too, is not to talk about ourselves. But you need to not only self-advocate, but also do it in a comfortable way. And so, there's always those funny old Saturday Night Live skits of, looking in the mirror and being like, I am wonderful, I am great, but you really do need to channel that and be able to feel a comfort level of saying all of your positives and saying it a way that you are not excusing yourself for saying it or apologizing for, interjecting it into the conversation, but saying it with confidence and pride, and making sure that you practice doing it, whether it's in the mirror or finding a confidant that someone who is your cheerleader in your life that wants to see you succeed in this effort, and that'll give you good, positive feedback about how you're selling yourself as well, to say, why don't you tweak this a little bit? It would be stronger, and so that you really can, because, you are really selling yourself. So you need all the research. Absolutely. You need all of the data. You need to be confident in what to say, but you also need to be confident in how you say it and comfortable in saying it.
Thank you, ladies. I think what you're really touching on is mindset. And I think that's such a pivotal role. Honestly, with all the years I've spent advocating for myself, for others, for teaching this, I actually believe that mindset is like 90% of the equation. And the tactical of what do you say is like just 10%. I'm going to share a little bit more about this, and then I'll just ask any other mindset shifts that the other ladies can offer. And, something that we already touched on is there's these sentiments that are offered, such as stay humble, be grateful. And those get very dangerous when we apply them in the workplace. I think something that also could be very dangerous is a message that's sent out to women about just know your value. And let me break that down. First, it places the responsibility of fixing the problem on the person experiencing the problem instead of the systemic issue. And also, I think we have especially in America, we conflate our personal identity and our personal value with our workplace identity. And what you really want to know the value of is your skills in that labor market. That's the value, not your value. Your value is infinite. Last thing I want to add here is that one of the techniques that I teach is about externalizing your why. Here's what I mean by this, and Helen touched on this. It could feel quite challenging to advocate for ourselves, and somehow it doesn't feel that way when we're advocating for other people. I'm going to give you just a visualization that I personally imagined in my own life that gave me fortitude to move forward. I imagined myself decades ahead. And I imagined her during years that she should be retired, enjoying her retirement. And it's the morning, and the alarm clock just went off. And she's sitting up in bed. Her bones are tired. She just wants to rest. But she has to continue working. Did anyone here know somebody that's still working maybe into their 70s? This is becoming an increasing reality, right? So if it's hard to do it for yourself now, please imagine her, she's you, and do it for her. For some folks, they do it for their kids, what they're going to do for their children as well. Any other mindset shifts from our group? And if you don't, that's okay.
What you just said really resonated with me, because I do hope to work into my 70s. It may not be exactly in the form and fashion in which I currently work, but I want it to be from passion
on your terms,
and from feeling that, what I have been putting forth is valued. But I will say this, and I'm sure that you may touch upon it, but given the why mission, I know that the eradication of sexism and racism is chief in your mission. And if the person who, because of the pay gap, can stop working at 60 is a white male, the woman will have to work a little bit longer because she makes 80% of his dollar, and the woman of color will have to work that much longer because she makes 60% of his dollar. So, I mean, that's just something to keep in mind as a stark economic reality based on the data that is collected by various federal and state agencies that do ask employers for salary data, and they provide it as they must. So that information about pay disparities is easily discerned if you're looking for it. And so for those of you who are managers within this group, be mindful of that. You're stewards of your organization's, its reputation, as well as its compliance with laws that require pay equity.
And I would also just say that, I know it's easy for us to share and say, have the confidence to do X, Y, Z, to do all of the things that we're talking about. But it is really imperative upon you to really sit within yourself and really think about what you want and to know that you deserve it, especially when you have prepared for it. And when you can think about all of the great, wonderful work that you're doing for your organization, then you should be able to think about all the great, wonderful salary, competitive salary that organization should be able to pay you. And if someone has left the organization or a long-term project has fallen on your lap and it's gone over a year, we're now going into a year and a half, 2 years, you should have the courage to know that you should be able to, ask for an increase or to negotiate, for your salary. And it just takes practice. It's not that you won't be nervous doing it, but if you prepare for the ask, I promise you, you will get to a successful yes and get what you're looking for. And preparing is just simply, you can write it down, talk to someone that you trust, whether it's a mentor, a friend, a family member, another colleague that you trust within the organization or outside of the organization within your network. Do like a model, if you will, and practice, with someone. But when you start to actually write down, and when you're keeping track of all of your accomplishments and your achievements and what you're giving back to the organization, you're going to say, golly, I'm doing some really great work for this organization. So, if I'm lacking here, I should be able to go to my employer and they should be able to give me this. Yes, if you do the work, right? But before we can get to doing the work, a lot of times that imposter syndrome might sink in, right? And so I just implore you to just, take your time, ask the questions, practice, and know that you can do it. It's about changing your mindset to know that you can do. Because if you can do great work for other people, you can do great work for yourself. Okay? And so that's what you have to understand. And just know that, there are resources out here to help you, to get to your yes.
I'd like to add that, obviously in my role, I'm an activist and I spend a lot of time advocating on behalf of many. I want us all to think about, though, the next generation of women that are coming up with us. We should think about our responsibility to ourselves for sure, but the more that we can keep pushing pay equity, the easier that they will have it as well. And I always think of the Native Americans saying about how the laws that they create really are for the generations that are coming after them and not necessarily even for them. So the work that you do in this area, the work that you are doing for yourself, think about that in the way that you are engaging with young women and the what you're telling them and the mindsets that they have as well, because, they're watching us also. And so we want to say it to them, but we also want to model it for them. And we also want them not to have the struggles that we all have. And I also, want to just say to all the white women in the room, it is something that we should really be focused on, that not only should we be thinking about addressing this for women, but specifically for all of our sisters of color, because we heard the statistic that, how many more years women will have to work. But everyone in this room who identifies as a woman of color, depending on the group they identify with, that number changes and is even longer for each of them. So being that we have a certain privilege because of our whiteness, it is our responsibility to speak up on behalf of all of us, because we can say things in rooms and have it heard differently. And we have to be talking about this issue and talking about this problem so that we bring everyone along with us in our comments and our conversations.
And that's. Thank you, ladies. So just in the last few minutes, we've talked about, actually brought awareness to other dimensions of this conversation. One other thing I also think about is actually a community impact and also an economic impact. Every year in America, the total annual earnings, women are earning $500 billion less than men annually. And women are twice as likely as men to spend money with local businesses in their community. So think about the economic impact from that way. Is there any other facet? We talked about, intersectionality here and kind of a generational implication. Any other areas of this conversation that our panelists would like to bring awareness to?
I do want, again, because I sort of occupy that space between employees and employers, I'm just interested in compliance with employment law. So I'm not an ideologue in favor of either quote unquote side as much as I am in favor of seeing the laws as they have been passed actually enforced. What I love about the Diane B. Allen Equal Pay Act, which is New Jersey's version of the federal Equal Pay Act, which has been around my entire life, is that, first of all, they have enforcement power to enforce the law in the ways that perhaps the EEOC did not and cannot still enforce the federal Equal Pay Act. It's a great law. It has teeth, but they don't bite as hard as New Jersey's law, which has a longer statute of limitations. It's 6 years as opposed to the Equal Pay Act's 2-year. And it's also one that protects not just women, it protects people of every protected category. So who does that cover in this room? Every one of you, every one of us. We, regardless of race, gender, national origin, sexual identity, or orientation, have a protected category under New Jersey's law against discrimination. And it is now, by virtue of the Diane B. Allen Act, part of the NJLAD, that you and your right to ask about others' salaries and to speak up about any salary inequities that you might see is part of that law. And it's also good for employers because it requires them to really be more cognizant of the metrics they use to determine salary, benchmarking, some of the resources that are available to employees for figuring out whether the salary I'm asking for is too much or too little. Well, as you mentioned, LaTonia has mentioned, the resources are there. I mean, you have online resources, you have LinkedIn, you have resources from the federal government as well as from New Jersey's Department of Labor that are made for that purpose to tell you how much does someone who does what I do earn, not just in New Jersey generally, but in Newark specifically maybe, or in South Jersey specifically. So that information's there. And why? Because employers have to provide it to the Department of Labor, the state's Department of Labor, quarterly and annually. And that should be a good way of reinforcing the mindset that, okay, why do we pay X more than Y? If employers, managers, supervisors, and you're sitting in this room too, the askers are here as well as the people being asked. You're all in this room. But if you're being asked, before you say no, figure out what your metrics are and your rationale for deciding that someone gets paid X as opposed to Y, and ensure that you apply those metrics consistently. That will create respect and trust among your employees, and they won't have to, look at you with a level of mistrust that no employer really wants. They're just trying to do their work too. So really, I think these laws are great for developing the language for continued dialogue that will hopefully lead to salary equity.
And in relation to our laws, I just would like to say, we have more laws that we need to pass here in New Jersey and across the country to continue these protections. And we need to remember these laws are necessary to create the culture shift, because most employers are not just going to do the right thing because it's the right thing. They need to be legislated and pushed to do the right thing, and then it will start to create that culture shift. And having these pay transparency laws and these equal pay laws does create an opportunity to remove some of the barriers so that people can advocate for themselves on an equal playing field. But what I want us to remember again is that there's more work to do here legislatively, here in New Jersey and federally. And we need to continue to, as women, not only advocate for ourselves, but advocate for these laws to be put in place. You should be talking about them to those folks that are in office that represent you. Remember, they work for you. I always try to remind people that it's not just once a year. You have to continue talking to them. Because unfortunately, if we look at who's making the laws, it's mostly white males. And many white males, and there was a research study at Vanderbilt University that recently came out where they looked at and had conversations with lawmakers, and lawmakers who were not passing pay transparency laws and equal pay laws around the country said that the reason they didn't do it is because it really was an issue that the women were just not asking for what was due to them, and that shouldn't be legislated. So think about that. They're seeing it as an interpersonal issue. They're seeing it as something that it's blaming the victim, that it's all of you, all of us, that is creating the issue. So there is no reason for a silly law to change the culture and shift. So we have to keep telling those that are in office. We also have to keep running for office so that the folks that are making the laws look more like us, and more so, even look more so like my counterparts here on the stage, so that we have that diversity in office making the laws, so that it isn't a mindset that it's an interpersonal issue, and there is an understanding that this is a culture shift issue, this isn't an equity issue, and that the only way that we will push this change is by creating these laws.
Thank you. Before we go to Q&A, I'll just ask LaTonia, did you want to add anything about potential resources or guidance for employers?
Sure, absolutely. So I have over 20 years in corporate HR, and during that time, I spent almost 10 years in compensation and executive compensation. And there are a lot of resources that a lot of large employers and medium-sized employers can use, and they use as part of their salary planning, which they would participate in salary surveys such as Aon Hewitt, Willis Towers Watson. They used to be Towers Watson in the past. Mercer is well known for their salary compensation surveys. Salary.com, while it's online, they did move to more robust salary surveys, specifically around executives. You have Culpeper. So there's a lot of resources for employers to use, and those salary surveys actually gather data on their employees, and they give salary data based on location, geographic, revenue size, division size. There's a number of different factors that go into it, and that's why when you're talking about salary, it's important to do the research, because it's not just, a salary, a simple salary, just, that applies to everyone, right? And they have, different, there's an average salary versus, someone in the 50% percentile versus someone in the 75th percentile, different things of those factors. So those are some salary survey tools that employers can use. And then you have a compensation policy. When you have a compensation policy put together that covers pay equity, pay transparency, your pay structure, your pay administration, and also communication of how you're going to communicate out the compensation on an annual basis to all of your employees, those things are very important. When you have it together and you actually use it and execute it and roll it out, and when employees have questions about it, when your leadership team has questions about it, you have a policy that you can pull out. If you're ever audited on your salary plans, you can pull out the policy to say, here is how we're rolling out our policy. Here's how we follow our policy. You may have some tweaks to it, depending on, if you're in a division versus whether you're in corporate. But at the corporate level, you should definitely have a compensation policy that really flows down to all of your business units.
Thank you so much. And I'll also let you know that Disrupt the Gap also has resources that can support you, including some here today. We've got something called Grade Your Pay, which is an assessment that looks through the lenses of what are your policies, what do you do for transparency, training, and other lenses, and it can help you understand how progressive or where those vulnerabilities are. And also we have a guide called Equate in 8, which is how do you do an enterprise-wide pay equality audit in 8 core phases. I know for the folks here that are employers themselves, it could seem daunting. How do you do a pay equality audit? And we break it down. So count those resources in your corner as well. Thank you so much to our panelists. We're going to start having some Q&A now. Okay, thank you. Oh, they're going to come around with the microphone. Oh.
Hello. Okay, here we go. So my question is more about what happens after. So for the last 6 years, I've been proposing a pay increase. I had all of my information, done all my research. I finally quit a couple of weeks ago, and they posted my job for more than $200,000 more than I was making. So was there any recourse for that, or am I too late?
Okay. I have a couple things.
With less experience than I have.
Wow. Okay. So one thing to keep in mind is these protections that we've talked about, they happen through the lens of peer equity. So if there was someone in that role, did you have a peer doing the same job at the same time that could have been making more? Yeah. No, you were the only one doing that job. Okay. I'm going to toss it out to some of our folks here to see, are there recourses if we're not going through the lens of peer-to-peer equity?
Well, I think that putting on my former prosecutor hat, I was a trial lawyer with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and in that capacity, we litigated Equal Pay Act cases. I will say, however, as Shell has noted, that it's harder when there is no comparator. Who is the comparator? It depends. Under the Diane B. Allen Act, your comparator may be someone of a different faith where you're arguing that I am being paid less than people of this faith. Could be someone of a different gender or what have you. And it doesn't have to be someone of the same job title. It could be someone who does the same work substantially in a different job title, as was also noted. So if there was someone perhaps who had the job in a different title or a similar job, that person may be your comparator. It could well be that you have recourse if you can demonstrate that there was some course of action undertaken pursuant to some protected characteristic that you have, be it your gender, your age, perhaps, perception of disability, what have you. I mean, but if you can demonstrate that, you may have recourse. But, this is sort of after the fact, and they may point to the fact that you resigned to cut damages, even if they are found to be liable.
And that's still a situation where I would say absolutely still get legal consultation on that. You probably don't know, but I'm kind of curious, the person doing the job before you, if you had that data point, that, okay. And also I'd be interested in what is the scope of duties? Is this scope of duties, if they've dramatically increased the scope of duties? No. Okay. So listen, I would still say no matter what, have a conversation. And if you need support with, that type of stuff, we can chat offline too. Thank you. Next question.
So I don't know how many people in this room work for very large companies where your salary increase comes at a percent, everybody's getting the same percent. If you get a promotion, not change a job, but promotion, which may change your responsibilities, but it's at a percentage, right? You're going to get a percentage of what. So there is no opportunity to ask for more money. There is no opportunity when you are promoted to really jump a ton because it's only a small percentage. So do you have any advice around that other than leave?
I'm sorry. So are you asking because there's a budget for it? Can you negotiate for higher pay?
Is there any recommendation?
You can always negotiate. Everything is negotiable. I don't care what anyone says. People will tell you, especially during the interview process, at the salary phase, during the promotion, that this is it. Okay. When they finish their sentence, then you go back and say, then let's open up the negotiation. Because, and if you have someone who, and I understand you may have a manager who says, we're really steadfast, but if you're being promoted, right? And if you really have an idea that, if I'm being promoted, the salary level or that total comp is not at a competitive salary, then you need to go back and you need to do the research for that and then I would bring it back to them to show and say, listen, I understand you have a budget, but the total comp, this is not a competitive rate. This is still, under the salary, and show them why. And so even though someone, says that, everything is negotiable, everything. Just because it stops with them, that doesn't, make it, that's the end all be all. I think it's important. I tell candidates all the time, it's important that you own your career and you don't let people stop you where they think that you should be, because people will tell you anything. But when you have the knowledge and then you can negotiate and communicate why you should be, at a certain level or at a certain total compensation, and you have the data to prove it, you have the achievements and the accomplishments, and in this type of, situation, is just really the data. Then when people see that, they see confidence, they see someone is communicating clearly, and they have the data and the facts. So now what? They have to take it back and at least go back and have the conversation. And so, and if they come back, they can at least maybe say, okay, we'll promote you, and then maybe in 3 or 6 months, we'll then increase it further. But everything is negotiable. And so I would encourage you all, when you're having those conversations, whether it's, you're interviewing for a role, you're getting promoted, don't let people just tell you the first thing, because remember, they're trying to stay within budget too. And a lot of times they're not going to, when you have a budget, they're not going to go to the top of their budget. But it's important that you arm yourself with the information and you communicate it in a concise and confident manner. Because when they see it coming across confident and then you have the information, what can they say? But go back and have the conversation again.
I'm just going to add quickly for that. I know, prevailing wisdom is that you have to leave the company to have a big jump, and that is a reality for many folks. Two lenses I would use for what you've shared. One is I would look at a market comparison. They're going to give you X%. Is that appropriate in the market? That's one lens. The other is, how are your job duties now scoped as a relation to how they were when you started the job? If you have increased your responsibilities beyond the original scope that the compensation was based on, that's another lens to use too. So I'm of the mindset that there might be more lenses than you realize. Thank you. Okay.
Well, I'm sorry.
Thank you. No.
Okay. I think this is more so for Miss LaTonia and Miss Andrée. I am an employer, so I need your perspective on that. So what if you have an employee who you promoted, was doing really well, at no absences, like almost perfect, and then as soon as you promote them, their performance goes terrible, where it's costing the company money. There's mistakes being made that are just unacceptable, and I literally have to have this conversation like as soon as possible. So I just need a little bit of advice on that, because I gave her a very significant increase in her salary to keep her, and she was performing at really high levels, and now her levels are very low to the point where it's costing the company.
So do you want me to take that first?
Please.
So have you had a conversation with him or her yet?
I did an evaluation. We went through all of her her duties now being promoted. She was supposed to sign the paperwork. She did not. It's just like a opposite. Like it just flipped.
I would have a deeper conversation with the individual to find out what's going on. Perhaps there is something personal going on that is causing, that is causing an impact to the individual's, work performance. So I would really have that conversation first, because a lot of times employees, they're excited about getting the promotion, right? But then when they get to promotion, sometimes out of the blue, things can happen. But then they don't know how to come to their boss to say, hey, these things are happening, or something has happened and has come up, and now I need to kind of change the way I work, because they want to do a good job, but in reality, they're failing. So I would really have a deeper conversation with them, number one, to find out, is there something going on with you personally that I can help you with? Because I promoted you for a reason, and as part of that promotion, we want you to continue to excel down the path. And then also, it sounds like you've been giving this individual the tools and the resources to be successful in the job. It's just that they've just done a complete 360.
I also think it's the commonality factor. So because she worked so close with me and I began to mentor her, I would bring her to even a conference like this. So when I started to do that, I think she just started to also become very common. So I think there's something going on more so that's deeper than just what you're saying as far as at home, because she expressed that already and I've helped her a lot with that. So now I'm hitting a plateau, because maybe it's the commonality factor. I don't know, but that's why I really need you to.
Yes. And so I think, yes. And I think, and so once you've kind of gotten past that point, I've had the deeper conversation, because at the end of the day, you are an employee. I'm the leader, I'm the boss, and I need you to perform. And so then it becomes the conversation of, listen, do you need to put this person on a PIP to perform, over a certain amount of time? And if not, and if they don't perform, then unfortunately, maybe they have to be then demoted. I'll let you chime in to maybe add to that. But there are things that you can do. And at the end of the day, you can't feel bad about it, because you have helped this person. You not only to, help them personally, but to help advance them, career-wise and professionally. And then for them to get in the role and not perform, that's on them. And that goes back to taking ownership of your career. We can't say we want the employer to do all of these things, but then when we get the opportunities, we're not doing our part. We have to be committed just as much.
Absolutely. So the only thing I can add, because I think that was really comprehensive, putting on my employer attorney hat here, I will say that, as was said, ultimately, you have a pact, you have a promise. I will pay you X, you will do Y. And perhaps because of the level of familiarity and trust that you two have formed, she does not yet understand fully that she is the employee and you are the employer. And that may require one very serious conversation where she understands that your role is not to be her friend, but to cultivate the best employee and ultimately perhaps partner in some sort of business venture, because you are cultivating this person to stand on her own ultimately and be expert at whatever it is she's learning to do, but she has to do her part. And that's the promise that you are making to her now. You know, for those of you in managerial roles, you've heard it before. Give evaluations, make them honest, make them timely. Don't wait till the person has been there 20 years to go, they're not very good. Because that's not the time to, you know, then express your real feelings. You've done nothing to cultivate or manage this person's career, and that would be a poor reflection upon you as an employer. So you are trying to make her go out there and be an ambassador for what your organization represents, and right now she isn't able to do it. My only word of caution with respect to having a deep personal conversation is not to touch upon areas like, you know, are you pregnant? Or, you know, to maybe make reference to a perceived disability. That stay away from that. Make your talking points, make them about her performance of the work, and find out whether there are any things or resources you can provide to help enhance her performance. Not make her happy, not help her buy a puppy, but really you're focused on her work performance and how you can partner with her and help cultivate an improved performance. And then ultimately, yeah, you drop the hammer, or at least tell her it's imminent. You know, we see improvement by X date, or further steps will have to be taken at that point.
Yep. And we're here, so we're happy to talk to you afterwards, and, you know, for the rest of the day or tomorrow if you want to stop by and tap us.
Thank you. Do we have time for more questions? No, we don't. Okay. So listen, I think we're the last event in this room today. So if you have a question, please stick around. Hopefully, so we will not leave this room until your questions are answered. I want to thank our panelists, Helen Archontou from YWCA Northern New Jersey, Andrée Peart Laney from Employers Association of New Jersey, LaTonia Pouncey with Talent Mix Solutions. Thank you for attending this panel. If you're looking for more resources, NJBIA has a suite of resources too, including HR training, classes on the art of negotiation as well. We look forward to networking with you throughout the rest of the event. BIA also has a silent auction and a gift shop going on. Thank you, everyone. I'm Shel Bobev, and I disrupt the gap because together we disrupt the gap. Thank you.